All right. Well, hello everybody and welcome. Happy week 9 for our slugs here today at Moondrew Quarter. Thank you so much for joining us today for our workshop, Job Searching in Business and Economics, our international career panel. My name is Andy Ng. I use he, him, his as my preferred pronouns, and I'm one of the global programming coordinators here in Global Engagement. And along with my colleagues and our panelists, we are so excited to welcome you today to our session. We know that it is very busy right now with week 9 happening. Finals is just around the corner. So we do thank you for your time in joining us and learning a little bit more about, how to work in business, economics, the job search, and all that today. So before we get started, I do want to go over a couple of housekeeping things with you all very briefly. Again, this session is recorded and our information today with our slides and the recording will be made available later today on our website in Global Engagement as well as the Career Center. We also want to remind you all that our panelists today work in different companies and they're here today to join us, and that their opinions do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their companies that they work for, but it is for themselves and their experience. So we want to remind you all of that as well. There is an accessibility option that is made available right now, should you like to use it. There is a live captioning happening, and so you're able to turn it on at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you would like this to be captioned live today. We also want to ask you all to save your questions until the very end. We have a series of questions that we prepared for our panelists today, but we know that throughout the session, things are going to pop into your head that you want to ask our panelists. We will have time for Q&A at the very end, so we do ask you to try to save those questions towards that time. If you have a dying question that you really want to ask our panelists right then and there, you're more than welcome to utilize the chat box to ask that question. And a panelist, if they're able to get to that question, let's say they're not speaking at that moment and can answer it very briefly, they may be able to do so. Otherwise, we do ask you to save those questions till the very end. And one last thing that we want to mention today, our panel does feature our 3 alumni student panelists that are here today. And originally, we did have a recruiter from Salesforce, Linda Trin, who unfortunately, because of some sickness, is not able to make it with us today. And so while we do, we're missing that recruiter aspect, unfortunately, we do have a couple of responses and words of wisdom from her that she did share with us as we did send her some questions. So during this panel today, while we won't have a live recruiter with us to talk about that experience of recruiting, we will still have perspectives from her, as well as our very own career coach, Yang, who is one of our hosts today as well. So you'll still get the information, and we do hope you enjoyed this panel today. So to go over quickly our agenda for today, we're going to go through some quick introductions from us and our facilitators. We'll go over a couple of challenges to consider, in particular for our international student population, things that they may be thinking about in terms of what the job search may look like in the US and beyond that. So let's talk about some challenges, as well as go over a little bit about work authorization for our students, because for a lot of you that are international, it's one of those forefront thoughts that you may have. How do I go about searching for jobs, and how does that affect my status as well? And then we'll go into our amazing recruiter and alumni panel. And there's 3 categories within this panel that we'll be hitting today. We'll be going over questions that talk about how to seek positions within the field. We'll go over some resumes and interviews tips. And we'll also go over some general hiring processes and reflection from our alumni panelists. And then, of course, we'll close it out with a Q&A, and we'll do a quick wrap up to end our session today. And so again, just to reiterate, my name is Andy. It's very nice to meet all of you today. And I'm here from Global Programming, which is one of the units within the Division of Global Engagement. So we are a huge office with many different elements, and I'm here with the programming side. So I wanted to pass it on to my wonderful colleagues, and I'll pass it over to Vanessa first.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everybody. Really glad to be here today with you all. My name is Vanessa Ori. I go by she, her, hers pronouns. I'm also coming from the Division of Global Engagement. I work as an international student and scholar advisor. So I work on the ISSS side with international students, particularly those who have F1 or J1 visas. So you may see me in an advising role or maybe helping out with events, and definitely happy to be here with you all today. I'm gonna pass it over to Yang.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hi, everyone. My name is Yang. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the international career coach with Career Success. I'll pass it back to you, Andy.
All right, awesome. All right, so once again, go over a couple of the challenges that a lot of our international students may oftentimes face. And so for many of you, you may be able to relate to some of these challenges and just general thoughts about the job search. We were able to poll some international students before this and got a couple of things and some themes that we wanted to highlight with you all of some of the intercultural challenges that international students may encounter with the job search. So obviously thinking about what is the American job search etiquette. For a lot of our students from different countries, the way that we look for jobs, the way that jobs are conducted, and just the general search itself can be very different. And oftentimes, there isn't a class or a lesson to really teach us what is that American job search etiquette. So it could cause a little bit of stress on students thinking about, first, how do I find the job? But then how do I go about the actual process of obtaining that job, right? So that's one thing that could be a little bit challenging, especially with the cultural difference between your home country and in the US. And to go along with that, an understanding of yourself and your own self-awareness in terms of your personal culture. So what we mean by that is your different values, your beliefs, and your attitudes, and how that aligns with the company that you're potentially going to work for and their actual work culture. So in thinking about this, a lot of our international students, a lot of you may be thinking about, well, personally, I'm aligned with this type of work style, or I believe that, you know, from my home country, where we are very much a team-oriented, society, a very communal society, like going to work for a company in the US, which is a little bit potentially more individualistic, can be a little bit challenging. And so how do we navigate some of those challenges that we encounter, right? It's not simply the work that we're doing, but personally, how are we doing the work and how does that go into play? And how do my personal beliefs and values align with the company that I'm going to be potentially working with? And it can be very difficult at first to really understand that until you actually start working for that job. So something to think about. And then another thing that a lot of international students may sometimes face is challenges within communication. And this extends beyond simply just communicating in English, if English is not your first language. There's things about body language, how we approach interacting with the employer when we get to the interview setting. Do I shake hands with this person during COVID times? That's not happening, obviously. How do we navigate that through a virtual realm? There's things that we do ourselves that we don't think about in terms of our communication that can sometimes be challenging or be misinterpreted because of that, because it is so ingrained in us. And so we oftentimes have to think about, how does my role and how do I communicate with others relate to my employer, relate to the job, and it could be a lot to handle at once. But we do want to bring this up at the forefront because we recognize that these are a lot of things that our students, like you all, are working through on a very daily basis when you're going through your classes, when you're engaging with fellow UCSC students, with family members, and your communities. And just know that you are not alone when it comes to these feelings either. So I wanted to pass it over to Yang, talk a little bit more about thoughts and feelings specifically related with the search process.
For sure. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, so we think it's important to acknowledge the fear and anxiety that many of you are experiencing because of the current socio-political climate, which I have to admit has been much improved since the Trump administration and the health climate situation, COVID-19 pandemic that we are currently in. And for some of you, these external factors that are outside your control can make the job search process seem ever more difficult. But like Andy said, you don't have to go through this alone. And you're not alone. You know, here at Career Success, we are here to support you through this difficult time on your job search and to help you with any career-related questions that you may have. With the ever-changing socio-political and health climates that I just mentioned, there's also this rapidly changing employment market. This is a good time to reflect and reassess your experience, your skills that you developed here at UCSC over the last couple of years. Take this time to think about your current career aspirations, create different career plans, create backup plans. Think about industries that you may have not thought about. What transferable skills have I developed that could be applicable to another industry? And to our third point, specifically for our international students, I mentioned this in the past, and I'm going to mention it again. Your intercultural experience and fluency is COVID-19 proof. It's timeless. Many employers value this intercultural diversity and perspective that you bring to their companies. Now, that is not to say that our domestic students do not have or cannot develop this competency, this experience. You certainly can. The takeaway point is, regardless of your immigration status, whether you're a domestic or international student, everyone has a diverse set of strengths and skills that you can offer to a potential employer. The challenge lies in, how do I market myself? How do I articulate my strengths and my skills so that they align with the companies that I want to work for? That's the challenge. And you have career success. Now, on to our fourth point. Many of you have been a student here at UCSC for the past couple of years, and this student identity has been deeply entrenched in you. So it's completely understandable that some of your feelings and some of you are feeling anxious about this next chapter, right? How do I transition from academic to industry, from being a full-time student to a full-time employee? Like I said, you don't have to go through this alone. You have a robust support system here at UC Santa Cruz that can help you. Global programming, international student scholar services. Here at CareerXSS, you have, many of you probably don't know yet, but you have access to us up to 4 years after graduation. So you could be done with school, start your first job or in the process of searching, but you may still have lingering questions about your career options. So please reach out to us. We're always here for you. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Vanessa to talk about work authorization and OPT.
Yeah, so along those lines, coming from ISSS, International Student and Scholar Services, of course, it's really important if you are an F1 or a J1 visa holder to keep the work authorization piece in mind, because we want to keep your status maintained. We want to keep everything legal. We want to make sure you have all the support you need and you're not running into immigration errors or anything like that. So that's where we come in ISSS. I wanted to point out a few of these terms and clarify what they mean, because you may hear them again from the panelists based on what experiences they choose to talk about. And in case this aligns, any of these things align with your goals in regards to working. So as an F1 visa holder, anybody here in the room, at a certain time, you will become eligible for CPT, which stands for Curricular Practical Training. And that is basically off-campus work authorization that's directly related to your degree. That authorization is approved in-house. It's something that we approve for you here in ISSS. So the processing time is relatively quick. You have to have a job offer at the time of applying for CPT, and you need to enroll in an independent study or field studies class to supplement that, unless the internship or job is directly required as part of your degree. And also for CPT, this takes place before you graduate. So the next step that many people would follow is OPT, optional practical training. And it starts with post-completion OPT. This is off-campus work authorization that allows you to accept jobs that are directly related to your degree following graduation. So after you graduate, you could be eligible for OPT. And depending on your major, you could also be eligible for STEM OPT, which is an additional 2 years of work authorization. So you could do OPT for 1 year, and some people might do STEM OPT for an additional 2 years. So it could be up to 3 years, depends on your major. This is a really good thing for people to take advantage of. It's a benefit of an F1 visa. Some of the people in the room here are on OPT and on STEM OPT or on OPT. And so they can talk about that. And also an H1b visa is another variety of work authorization that could take place. It's for people who are in specialty occupations, so a really specialized technical job and degree, which gives work authorization for up to 3 years. And this sponsorship takes place from the employer, but is authorized by the government, by USCIS. And that's the same actually for OPT as well. It's a government authorization for working. So ISSS is totally a place to get more information about how these things work. I wanted to give some basic context in case our panelists are talking about these work authorizations and how it played into their career journeys. So hopefully that gives some basic understanding, and feel free to touch base with us again as it comes, depending on whatever your goals are. So that's about that for work authorization, and we'll move forward to introducing our alumni panelists, which I'm so excited to have here with us today. Thank you again, all three of you, for joining us. If you wouldn't mind doing some self-introductions, and please provide, of course, your name, your preferred gender pronouns, give us some information on your academic background, what kind of degrees you have, both from UCSC and otherwise, your home country, and just anything, any initial information you want to share about your current employer and your current position. And we can go ahead and start with Zero.
Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Tianyi Zhang, and I go by Zero. I obtained a bachelor's degree from UCSC in 2018, where I double majored in math and econ. I then obtained a master's degree from Cornell University in 2019, where I majored in applied statistics. I am from Shanghai, China. I am currently an associate analytics consultant at DAS42. We are a fast-growing team of individuals who have experience in all aspects of data, such as data engineering and data analytics. I'm currently on a project with HBO Max. To get everyone excited, DAS42 is hiring, and so does HBO Max. And I'm happy to share more on the opportunities later.
Thank you so much. And Joyce?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you for having me on this panel. Yeah, so I graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's in business management economics and a minor in TIM. And then I continued my education here at UC Santa Cruz and did a 1-year applied economics and finance master's program. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm currently working at this company called Qualitest, which is a software testing company, initially from Israel, but they have a bunch of branches here in the United States. And I'm currently in Austin, Texas, and I'm working as a quality analyst. But as of a couple months ago, I took on more management leadership roles, and I'm currently a project lead for my team of 8 people. And we are working on improving the search quality for Google Assistant products. Our team is also rapidly expanding, and we're looking for people pretty much who speak different languages besides English as well. So yeah, similar to Zero's situation. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, after the panel.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Dima?
Hi, everybody. My name is Dima. I came to the United States in 2014 and studied for a couple of years in community college in Cupertino, the ANZA college. And then I transferred to UCSC to finish my degree in BME. And I graduated in December of 2018. And just before I did that, I did internship at the company called Supply Chef. That's the company I'm working for right now. We are developing a software to help other companies to improve their supply chains. So tackling all the issues around sustainable supply chains. and I've been working there since then. Uh, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Thank you. And thank you all again so much for your time. It's so valuable to have the student perspectives and to really hear the student stories. So we really appreciate the efforts and time to spend with us today and sharing your insights. All right, and moving on to Yang to introduce our recruiter panelist.
Thank you, Vanessa. So like Andy mentioned, unfortunately, we don't have a recruiter panelist. She's not able to join it because she's sick, but we were able to provide the questions to her, and she was able to provide her responses back. So as we're going through the different questions, I will be reading her responses to you all, and I will also be sharing my perspective as a career coach in that regards. So Linda Trent, MBA. Also note her email address. She said that if you have any questions after the webinar or anything about her responses, feel free to email her. So please take note of her email address. And I believe, Andy, are we sharing this PowerPoint with the students too, so they can have access to the different links?
Mhm.
Yeah. So she's graduated from UC Santa Cruz in 2003. She's been in the workforce for quite some time now. She's currently the director, finance transformation portfolio management at Salesforce. So we included some fun facts about Salesforce. This company ranks number 4 on LinkedIn, right, as top companies. So Salesforce is headquartered in San Francisco and has 58 office locations across 27 countries. Some of the fastest growing skills: data analysis, cold calling, sales management, job function with the most new hires, sales engineering, business development. Salesforce has over 4,000 open roles across the US, and not all require a college degree. So it's worth checking out the website after this webinar. Okay, so with that, let's get to the next slide, Andy. So let's start off with our first theme, seeking positions. So alumni, we're gonna have you go first. Our questions for you. Tell us about your job search experience. Did you attend career fairs, networking events? What tips do you have for our audience today?
Yeah,
So anybody can jump in.
I can go first.
Okay.
So I guess during my master's program, which was a 1-year program, I started to do job searching in fall. I applied online, reached out to recruiters on LinkedIn, friends I know, and I also went to career fairs, networking events. Like basically every opportunity I could think of or I knew, I took it. But I only got several interviews and didn't manage to get any offer. I kind of knew that I was weak in technical skills and the lack of real world experiences like job internships and stuff like that. So I started just to practice SQL and Python besides the school work. And in spring, we only have 2 semesters here at Cornell. I was getting more interviews, and finally, I secured this job opportunity at Das 42 towards the end of April. And I got to know Das 42 during the career fair, became more interested, and went to their info session right after the career fair. And they were targeting Cornell and CU Boulder and several other schools they have connections with. So I guess I got lucky because opportunity just opened up to specific group of people. But I must admit that I like the culture there and the work they do and believe in what they believe. Regarding tips, I would say the first one is don't give up. It's kind of cliche, but yeah, you need to take every opportunity, work towards your goal, and I would say reach out directly to your alumni or just to someone that you probably don't even know. But if you see, okay, this person graduated from UC Santa Cruz, then it's better to reach out because people just share in common. They would be more likely to go get back to you. And then applying online, of course, if you see any openings that you feel like it's a match, then you should just go apply. And the second one is understand. I think it's really important to understand yourself. What is your dream job? What kind of company and job that you're looking for? not just the big names. Everybody wants to get into the fancy companies, but sometimes it's the reality that it's just more competitive over there and you get less opportunities. So for example, I love talking to people, helping solve problems and believe getting exposed to different industries in my early career is just really important. So I started to look for opportunities that involves like data analytics, talking to people, and so on. So kind of data consultant kind of became the one. And the second one is understand the match. What kind of people are the companies and jobs looking for? Show it on the resume, your cover letter, your interview, because I think it's like a mutual, I guess, choice. Like you are choosing a company and the company is also choosing you. So make sure that you do your research, understand the company, and then understand the job description.
Thank you, Zero, for sharing your experience. What about Dima and Joyce?
Yeah, I can go. My job search experience also was a little bit stressful, especially as I was getting closer to graduating from UCSC. I did attend career fairs at UCSC, and that was obviously helpful to get some experience talking to actual recruiters and physically. I know that's might not be possible right now, but I also got kind of lucky. The company I ended up doing an internship at, and the one I'm working for right now, came to one of my econ statistics class, and they were hiring interns. My company is Santa Cruz-based company, and I was able to secure an internship with, back then it was a very small company of less than 30 people. But yeah, again, it wasn't a big company, so I had a really good experience, and I think internship helped me a lot to understand how I can be helpful for this company and learn a lot of skills, which later on allowed me to get a full-time position in that company, and then securing H1b with that company and so on. So I think from my point of view, securing an internship and thinking about CPT as early on as possible is important, and also developing some skills that might be very popular right now. And somebody already mentioned SQL and Python or things like this, if you're of course interested in more technical side of things. So that was really useful, I think, to mention and learn this more real skills. Yeah, so I think my main tip is to start thinking about it as soon as possible and just playing ahead, but never give up.
Thank you, Dima. Yeah, it seems like your experience is very similar to Zero, right? You all attended career fairs, start thinking about internships, right? Get internships early on. You never know, it might turn into a full-time later, right? And so the experience that you develop over the course of the 4 years, right? Internships, networking. So I heard that computer languages, SQL, Pythons, right? Get it, maybe get a head start on learning those languages. So that's important too. Joyce, would like to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So my job search experience was chaotic too, if I put it that way. I started reaching out to a lot of people on LinkedIn for positions that I was really interested in, recruiters, people that I didn't know but worked in a company that I was really interested in, and even though I knew I lacked some of the skills, I really tried to talk to them and meet them to talk about how their experience was and what their day-to-day job looked like, because so I could get a better understanding of what I really needed to work on. So that really helped me to kind of categorize and inventorize my skills and what I really needed to work on. So I spent the year just going to networking events. I really try to push myself out of my comfort zone, outside of UCSC workshops and career events. I also, traveled to San Francisco and San Jose to meet a bunch of recruiters there. And I actually didn't find a job until after I graduated. This was back in August. Someone had reached out to me because during the time I ended up changing my resume a bunch of different times. I created about 20 different resumes, highlighting different skills tailored to different positions. And one of the resumes, I kind of highlighted my Dutch language skills. And this company that worked with Google, they were, trying to launch a lot of their Google products in the different countries, had reached out to me. And that's when I kind of just got really lucky there. But definitely some of the tips I would, push out to is try to get out of your comfort zone. Don't be discouraged if you do get rejected, because I've gone a couple interviews and never really made it through the first or second round. Um, but yeah, don't get discouraged. Try to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to reach out to people on LinkedIn, because the one person that I reached out to on LinkedIn who was, telling me about his day-to-day experience of this job actually ended up reaching back to me a couple months later after I already accepted my job at Qualitas, asking me if I was interested in a couple positions there so he could refer me. So, all in all, it could work out in the end. And I would also say, like, don't try to find your dream job, or don't expect to find your dream job as your first job right out of college. Because I got into this job not really knowing what to expect. It kind of aligned with what I wanted, but not really. But then once I got the job, the doors will pretty much open for you. You could move vertically, you can move horizontally within your company. I shifted from a more technical position to a more management position now. So it's definitely, for your first job, don't be scared to take on opportunities. They might not be exactly what you want to do, but once you get the first job, like, a lot of doors will open for you. So yeah, I would say good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very great advice, Joyce. And can I, if I may just elaborate, especially, you know, thinking about like the dream job, right, out of college, and if that's not going to happen, then maybe a smaller startup company. And once you're in a position like that, you can continue the networking, right, with other audience, other members, right, other colleagues, and the skills that you develop in a position too, right. It's not, you can then apply to the next position and so forth. So thank you for sharing your experience with that, Joyce. And DMAT and Zero. So let's transition to career coach. So I'm going to share Linda's response to this question, and then I will add to Linda's as well. So Linda says, regarding networking, this is quote, 90% of the jobs that I've received have been through networking. Networking helped me informally understand what people liked about their jobs, their company, and what the company culture was like. When I saw the job opening online, I reached out to people I networked in the past to learn more, or ask them to help refer me to a position. Try to network with UCSC alumni, your high school colleagues, people you meet through community work, friends of friends. Have an up-to-date LinkedIn so you can easily connect with people. Network with people who had similar majors as you to see where their careers took them after UCSC. It varies so much. She continues, networking can be done through informational interviews. Informational interviews are great ways to learn about a company you are interested in, if there are openings, Oftentimes, a hiring manager will know about openings coming up and what the company culture is like. This can be done through phone, Zoom, or even email, LinkedIn, in conversations. Everyone loves to help students, especially alumni. So check out any companies and see if any UCSC alumni went there and try to set up an informational interview to learn more. Google informational interview to learn more about this topic or attend a workshop on this topic sponsored by UCSC. This also helps you understand what you may be good at, how you may be able to apply that to a company. For example, I'm really good at project management, talking to various stakeholders and facilitating meetings. When having informational interviews with people, I try to see if these skill sets are valuable in some roles at the company. End quote. So, oh, one more. She actually continues on with resume. Regarding resume, try to tell a story with your resume. Most likely, you'll be piecing together a lot of work and community experiences to tell a story to the company about what kind of person you are, what you have done in the past, and how you can contribute to the company. If you're majoring in business administration economics and are applying for an analyst position, talk about the classwork, group work, field studies you've done that will contribute to understanding of the world, how the company works, and what this role is. Put extracurricular activities on there. End quote. So that's her statement. That's her response to this question here. And I would just add, I agree with many of her points, and not only that, but some of her points are actually right. The alumni panelists, right? You all follow through with what's some of the things that she mentioned. So that's good to see. With information on interview, I would say look on our UCSC career homepage. We have dedicated right website subtopics about information interviews and other career related topics. So start there. That would be a good starting point to get more information. How do I go about conducting information interview? What about networking, right? So start at our homepage. And I would she mentioned resume, so I would add a cover letter, right? So you want to write a cover letter for every position that you apply. That would be, that's important. Oftentimes when you apply for jobs, you you see that a cover letter is optional, right? But I still encourage, as a career coach, I still encourage you all to submit a cover letter, just because for one, it shows that you have writing skills, right? Professionalism. You could, it's in a business format template kind of way, and so it shows that you have the professional skills. So, and two, like what Linda is saying, you're telling a story with your resume. For the cover letter, you're showing your personalities, because keep in mind that when you apply for a job position, it's your application materials that the employer get to see, right? So include that cover letter, right? And show your personality in the cover letter. That's important. My attend job fairs event, I think our alumni panelists mentioned that, right? So that was going to be my advice, is to definitely attend job fairs, check out our career events calendar. Every quarter we put out a number, well, us career coaches and our employee relations team, we put out a number of career events. So be sure to stop by our career events calendar and see upcoming events and see if they're related to your interests. So that's important. And then definitely visit our website, because we have a ton of information, and you'd be surprised, especially with a student I met, right? And sometimes they ask very simple questions, right? And I would ask them right back, have you visited the Career Center website? No, not yet, right? And so it's important to start there. Or we have a ton of information on there. So visit. Thank you, Vanessa, for that, for linking the career website. Yeah. So those are a few of my tips, and along with Linda's. And thank you again, our alumni panelists, for sharing your perspective on seeking positions. So I'm gonna hand it over to Vanessa to continue our second theme.
Thank you. Alrighty. So we were touching on how to kind of find the positions, how do you seek them out, how do you get connected with people? Now let's think about more specifically, and we already touched on some of these things, kind of the interview and the resume process. Well, vice versa, the resume process and actually landing an interview or going through with the interview. Any tips in that sense? So we'll start with the alumni again. Anybody can start. I'll just read all the questions and you can kind of pick up on whatever, kind of speaks to you the most. So, how did you approach your resumes? Did you tailor them for each position? What resources did you use to update and strengthen your resume? How did you prepare for your job interviews? What were your interviews like? And what tips do you have? Anybody can take that away.
I can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So I prepared my resume and again tried. Somebody already mentioned that adjusting it to maybe a company you're applying for, and mentioning some specific keywords that are listed in the job posting. So I would just look directly in the job posting, and it should be pretty clear what are the kind of main requirements they're looking for, and just making sure if you have those skills, or if you have them to some extent, maybe not completely, and some of those requirements might be very broad, like data analytics. It's such a broad field, but all of us, I think, done data analytics in some way or another, and you might not even know about it, but you have that skill, definitely. So tailoring it to the position, I think it's important. So that's where it kind of like spray and pray might not work best. So tailoring to the position might be really nice. And there is also, I think, some mechanisms that are checking resumes automatically especially for the bigger companies. They just do a machine check that they have 20 keywords, and what part of them are matching in your resume. I also used some resources or software for a resume builder. That way it just looked a little bit cleaner, and yeah, they would provide you with already like nicely formatted structure, so that will make it even easier. I think I particularly used Novo Resume. I think that's what it's called. So that's useful. They even have tips there, like what should go into this section or go into that section. So that was really nice. And for just because that's experience I went through during my job interview, which at first was internship interview, and then I didn't have much of a like formal full-time position interview. So again, my company was very small, and there wasn't any bureaucratic processes you might encounter in other bigger companies. It was more kind of easier because I was just able to talk it through people and express my interest in the company, and I think that what did the trick. So yeah, I think that's would be my take on this.
So I kind of wanted to go over, some tips I had for how I prepared for my job interviews and what my interviews were like. So, I mean, apart from like definitely researching, the company and then the positions and knowing, what skills are needed for the position that you're applying for, I always made sure that I kind of did research about what type of questions I could be expecting them to ask me. So apart from like the very general analytical questions, maybe try to find some articles of someone who works in that specific position. And usually they have articles online where they can provide you with example questions that they might get thrown at you during the interview. So that's something that I've tried spending a lot of time preparing for my job interviews. Also leverage your recruiter. The recruiter is the first contact person usually when you get an interview, and but they are usually not the ones that are ending up interviewing you. They'll usually just do like a quick check with you, asking if the basic information matches what they're looking for. But then once you actually get to the interview, you're usually interviewing a manager in that specific industry or area that you're interested in, or someone who is already in the team. So leverage your recruiter, ask him or her a lot of questions like, can I expect a test? Can I expect a skills test on my interviews? What are they like? What, is there any way for me to, look up more information about this person that I'm going to be interviewing? So, I would highly recommend leveraging and getting as much out of the recruiter and information that you need, because that will help you a lot as well to prepare for the interview.
I would say I totally agree with Dima and Joyce, and especially on just tailor the resume part. This is what I heard from my career advisor at Cornell too. Like they use some machine to scan your resume and then to compare with the job description. So to make sure that you use the exact wording, that's is just the piece of advice I received. So for example, if the job description says build a dashboard, then you would like to use the exact. Don't use like conduct the dashboard, stuff like that. Design a dashboard. Just make sure to use like create a dashboard, the same wording. And the other one, I would like to kind of just share how did I approach my resume. I actually went to the writing tutor at ISS at UC Santa Cruz for my resume because I think there are certain like what choices I wasn't familiar with. I wasn't sure how to make sure that my resume looks as formal, as professional as possible. So that's the first step I went. And also I built kind of relationship with writing tutors. And that was nice. And the second step I took was I went to the career department at UC Santa Cruz as well as Cornell one. I grabbed a typical job description of kind of the dream job I was looking for. And then I brought the most updated resume I have, and then just kind of ask for advices. How can I update it so that it catches like recruiters' eyes, stuff like that. So I think make sure if you do want to go to a career coach for some advice, give them something that they can easily to work on, because otherwise the advice you get might be a bit too broad that it's hard to really take into actions. But if you grab a job description and then they might say something more specific, more particular about this job, and if this job description is pretty typical for all the jobs that you are looking for, then it's even better. And I would also love to share my interview experience. My first interview was a video interview with the HR at That's 42, and it was basically intro and I talked about my experience and I showed my passion towards the field or the work they do, and shared why I'm interested in their jobs, why I'm a match. It's a pretty, I guess, standard type of video interview with HR. And the second one was a resume walkthrough with another like senior member, a senior data consultant at the company. And she actually went into more detail about the questions or just the specific my resume questions. And the third round was a technical round. So we did a open book, open internet, SQL and Python test. It was conducted in person. It was before COVID, so they actually traveled to our school. And the last one was a super day in New York City. That's the office I'm in, and I currently live in Jersey City, New Jersey. And the super day was pretty long. It was from 1 p.m. to midnight. So it starts from 6 rounds of 30-minute interview with the members on the team. They have different emphases. They have behavior questions. For example, how do you manage conflict between different teams? How do you prioritize tasks from different stakeholders, stuff like that. And some of them are more knowledge-based. They asked me about statistics, theory questions, machine learning, because I have those on my resume. And they also had a kind of logical reasoning question. And after that, it was a 30-minute with the CEO. My company is fairly small. We only have 40 to 50 people right now. And by the time I joined, it was only 30 something people. And I asked about his experience. Why did he found this company? His vision for the company, successful stories with the clients. I was pretty surprised that with such a small company, they actually had Uber, Dropbox, like those big enterprise clients. So I'm just interested, how did they get the clients? So really put yourself into as a prospective employee, and then try to think of questions like that. And lastly, not lastly, but the next thing was an on-site team project. They would like to make sure that we can explain technical stuff to non-technical people, and that's just a really important skill for any analytics person. So it was to ask us to use Looker, which is a software partner that my company uses. It's like Tableau, if you guys are more familiar. It's like a data visualization tool, and it has data modeling portion to it. And it was a team project of 3 or 4 people, couldn't remember, and answer a question. For example, okay, is this business doing well? When do we launch another time of campaign based on just the data and the Looker? We need to build visualizations and then just have a little summary of why do we think the business is doing well, or how can we improve, stuff like that. And it was either 1 or 2 hours. And afterwards, it was a dinner/social event. There are people that I haven't met during the 6 rounds of interview, but they are still with the team, with the company. And it was a chance for us to get to know everybody, um, the current employees at us42, as well as other candidates. And I thought that was a really nice networking event too. And one interesting fact, I was interviewed by a UCSC alumni. So he is no longer with the company, but then he graduated from UC Santa Cruz, and then right after that, he joined Das42. And another interesting factor or fun fact is one of the biggest partner, which is Looker. Looker's headquarters is actually in Santa Cruz. It's in downtown, right across Urban Outfitters. And they are just gradually growing or rapidly growing, and they were acquired by Google last year. So I guess it was some sort of connection, and also just really prepare for any questions they might ask, just like how Joyce described, but also to research. I read all of their articles, all of their blog posts, and I looked at each person's LinkedIn so that I know who I'm talking to during the interview. And I kind of started with something common, like for example, the UCSC interviewer. I kind of talked about, okay, which college we're in, stuff like that. So kind of try to show personality during the interview. And it might be easier just to start from some little talk, some small talk of something in common.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I took a few notes. Even somebody like me, I'm learning from student alumni panelists and all this great advice. I mean, it's so interesting to always hear about everybody's different career journeys and what worked and what didn't work, and all the different tips that we learn as we go through these experiences. Some kind of highlights from what I was just hearing: for resumes, really important to tailor and customize every single resume that we submit for different job applications. Make sure you're including keywords, using the job descriptions to kind of reverse create your resume for that particular position. Get feedback and help reviewing your resumes in advance. I put some links into the chat from the Career Center. Again, that's one way that you can get help with your resumes. I'm sure there's many different people who would love to review your resumes. Research your employer, anticipate what you're going into for an interview. Do practice interviews, be prepared for behavioral questions, knowledge-based questions, logical reasoning questions. Anticipate who will interview you, do some research on their background, be ready to kind of pitch those connections, leverage the connections that you have with those people, and be prepared for multiple rounds of interviewing. There could be, depending what they're looking for, kind of the passion, personality piece, or making sure you have the real skills, or do you have the technical skills? And then how do you fit in with the company culture and like the actual environment that you'd be working in? So I think all in all, it's really important to prepare and practice and get feedback and be persistent. And some of these opportunities will work out and some won't, but no matter what, I mean, we're still growing and learning from each opportunity, and it will only help us with the opportunities that come next after that. So thank you all for sharing your experiences with resumes and with interviewing. And Yang, I know you were speaking about resumes on the last slide as well, reading some of Linda's feedback. Do you have anything that you want to add as far as interview resume tips from the career coach side, or from anything you gained from Linda as a recruiter, skill sets, traits you look for on the resume, or any other specific advice for international applicants? Oh, I think you're on mute there.
My bad. All right, yeah. No, I can't stress enough about highlighting your transferable skills, right? And oftentimes, you apply for a position. I think the student alumni panelists mentioned a couple of points already about how using keywords that are similar to the job position, right, to the job descriptions. But in addition to that, think in terms of your transferable skills, right, your soft skills. So maybe your communication skills, right, highlight that in there too. So soft skills are important, and I think that students often forget that they have developed these soft skills from joining a club, right, being a member or in officer positions, or in a volunteer positions, that you develop leadership skills through that way. And so remember to highlight your transferable skills that would make you a competitive, a team player, in addition to the hard skills that these positions are seeking. So that's on resume. And I think regarding interview, it comes down to practice, right? I can't stress this enough. Practice, practice, and practice, really. I see interview, it is a skill that if you practice over time, you're gonna get better at it, right? So think of it I like to use the metaphor of like a soccer game, or playing soccer, right? To get better at it, you need to start learning. You can kick the ball, right? But then what about like the steps, right? The procedures that you have to learn, like, oh, this is the effective way of how to kick and to, make it go faster, or to curve the ball. So similar to interviews, you have to learn the questions, anticipate the questions, but then is there a format to answering behavioral questions, right? And there is, and there's the STAR method that you probably have to learn. Well, what's the, specific way that I can answer the question, tell me about yourself, right? So that you don't end up rambling about telling more than what they want to what they're asking. So yeah, that's my take on interview and resume. Can I read what Linda has for us too? Okay.
Please.
Yeah. So regarding the two bottom questions, Linda said, I understand that many people who have just graduated may not have a lot of paid job experience, and that's okay. But I will look for people who did summer internships, work study, community work, and projects that center around their major. Let's see here. For example, if you're majoring data science and analytics, you may not have had a job where you could apply this work, but did you find a project that you could do in your community that led to an impact? For example, analyze COVID transmission rates and made recommendations to open up schools or help a company, nonprofit during this time to help them through this pandemic. I personally look for someone who has participated in some extracurricular at school where they held some sort of leadership position. I personally learned a lot by being president of the UCSC Chinese Student Association and being involved in the mural events office for several years as well. Salesforce is a big proponent of giving back to the community and being part of equality groups such as Asian employee resource groups. So don't feel shy to put these experiences on your resume. This includes sports as well. And she continues on. Let's see. Okay, the second question, right? Do you have any specific advice for international applicants? She said, I personally look for, let me backtrack. I know that in tough times, it may be difficult for companies to sponsor visas. It is all dependent on the company and the economy. Try to look for international companies that have offices in your home location, if you're open to that, so that you could transfer later to a US office in the future. Recruiters will often ask you if you have visa requirements, so be honest during your first conversation with a recruiter. Given COVID-19, a lot of employers are opening up where they hire from, so there may be more possibilities now than in the past. End quote. Back to you,
Cool.
Vanessa.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your insights as career coach and for giving some insights from Linda as well.
Mhm.
And I think next we'll move on to our final theme before we open up to Q&A from the audience. So take it away, Andy.
Thank you so much. And again, all of this has been so wonderful so far. So let's talk about a little bit about our reflections so far in our careers. And so this section really focuses more so on the reflective piece, especially as your identity as international students, international workers now. So as an employee, what challenges did you overcome in your job search? What feelings did you experience? Maybe share a little bit about what you went through. And how does your identity as an international employee impact your job, your relationships with coworkers, your community, and your overall experiences? So any of our amazing panelists can start.
I can go ahead and get started. I guess the challenges I overcame in my job search was just to look for the specific jobs that sponsors. Otherwise, it wastes time. Like I got really excited for this job opportunity, but then they don't sponsor. So I guess just kind of admit that this can be the reality, but focus on the ones that they say that they will sponsor. And sometimes do some other researches. I know you can go ahead. I think it was My Visa Jobs or some website that you can see how many employees were sponsored for the past years for this specific company. And I think that might be a good indication of, okay, this company might sponsor. And the second one is, I would say it is hard, it is challenging, but I also feel like I wasn't alone in my master's program, and also some other friends from UC Santa Cruz. We were all looking for jobs at different geographic locations, but we all encountered, I guess, challenges. And it's good to talk to someone, whether it's your friend, whether it's your family, whether it's someone that you met in school that you feel like can be supportive. And it is just important to tell yourself that you are not alone. Regarding the second question, I guess as an international employee, my culture sometimes can be a bit different from what other people's. And I would say that I bring my own culture into the company and I diversify the company and the team. This is what I really, I guess, embrace. And as an Asian, hardworking is really well accepted. However, I needed to adapt to the company culture. I can give an example. So for my project work, it was HBO is a really big company, a big client, and it was only three of us who were put on the project, and all of us. It was my first project, and the other two teammates second project. So we are pretty new, and we wanted to earn trust from HBO Max, and we would like to extend our contract if possible, or just taking up some of the potential works from other teams. And we are all Asians. We agreed kind of that, okay, as long as we reach the goals, we will work hard, we will work overtime. And on weekends, we sometimes needed to just do some prep work together. And it was well accepted by all of us, three of us. However, after a while, that burnout happens. And also, I guess our leads kind of just noticing the change that we I guess, present. And it became a pretty serious conversation. They don't expect us to work overtime and work on weekends as like that's 42. And they, of course, they listed out the advantages of not working overtime. And also, it just gives the company a better I guess, insight of how much time we are spending. Maybe three of us is not enough. They can get more people onto the project, which is a good thing for our company. Or just gives the client I guess, an overview of, okay, they are giving us much work than we could handle within the reasonable time frame, and that could help them adjust their goals, adjust their project scope, stuff like that. So after that I guess happened, I just realized that expressing my feelings and expressing what on my mind is super important, and not just to my team leads but also to teammates and perhaps like project or clients. We have a project manager, so like express that to the project manager and then express that to the clients is just equally important. I would say sometimes the value that I personally feel like it is such a good trait, it might not be the best for a working environment. So acknowledge that and just adapt to the environment, but at the same time, making sure that you are confident and comfortable of expressing yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with Zero on the challenges during the job search as an international applicant because of the visa restrictions. Um, um, I would, yeah, like I said, I think I agree with Zero. It's not worth, I guess, spending too much time looking into these type of companies. And similar to her, I also went on the My Visa Jobs website to see, I think it was top 100 companies that are filtered by the amount of sponsorships they give out each year, where you can get a kind of get an idea of like what type of companies would sponsor you and what wouldn't. And I do notice that a lot of government companies generally tend to only hire U.S. citizens, whereas a lot of tech companies, they are a lot more flexible. So I, was very lucky to kind of like find a position there. Um, but yeah, the feeling is definitely like you feel very limited to opportunities. You feel like you don't have the equal chances as like a US citizen here. And especially I think, when Trump was in administration, immigrants were not really like put on the pedestal with the whole social and social situation. But finding a good support system is really nice, and trying to connect with people who are in a similar situation as you could very much kind of like help you defeat the feeling of like hopelessness. And yeah, and how my identity as an international employee impact my job. I think my case is very unique because I work with people from all over the world right now because we work on expanding our products in a lot of countries. So my team consists of people from a different place. So I'm very lucky to be in a workspace where we value diversity, where we value different cultures and different opinions. Our managers are very, very accommodating to that as well. So, I would recommend if you are looking for a diverse, space, do a lot of research about companies that work maybe with localization, or if you see like they're rapidly expanding outside of the US market, try to look for companies that are currently, in that situation. um, I do feel like sometimes I felt personally intimidated when a manager or boss would invite us to social hours, invite us to like go drink a beer with them because um, in Europe there's a much more hierarchical structure where you don't really have that personal relationship with someone who's your manager or who's your project lead. Whereas here in the United States, that hierarchy borders are definitely a little bit more grayish, and they actually encourage you to become their friend. They encourage you to have a good relationship with them also outside of work. And so that was something that I kind of had to adapt to personally. But I think all in all, that really helped the employees be more vulnerable and be more open towards the managers. So it's definitely a very different workspace that I had to accommodate to, but it's been a really good experience so far. And I definitely feel like America's work culture is very open. So if you do have any challenges, if you do feel like, I don't feel comfortable with this or this or this, that you're allowed to kind of vocalize those challenges. Yeah.
I guess for me, the main challenge was in everything related to sponsoring and kind of like the future of my working at my company after internship and CPT. So I think for me, what kind of helped is to point out that at that moment we were specifically talking about internship, and wasn't any huge investments from the company to hire me. And just I maybe in bigger companies recruiters would know more, but in the smaller ones I think helped me to point out that, hey, I can already start bringing value right now, and then we have some runway, and then we can talk about other things later on. So CPT, again, that's why at the beginning I mentioned that preparing earlier and allow more time to do things like internship was really helpful, because again, CPT is not a huge lift for the company, for any company, big or small. And being an international employee, I think actually helped me to get internship and then a full-time position. In my case, I'm from Ukraine, and my first language is Russian, and it is kind of known that a lot of US companies are hiring or outsourcing some of the more technical engineering work to that region of the world. So I think that played out as a benefit for me, that I can freely interact with people in that part of the world, and I know the culture and everything. So that's I think helped me a lot in that case. And yeah, as other panelists mentioned, Joyce and Zero, it's I think companies are actually valuing that you bringing this diversity and that you can offer something that maybe a US employee might not be able to bring. So I think there's good ways you can bring it to your own advantage. Yeah, and again, as the panelists mentioned, companies here are very open, and they're willing to help you, talk you through things. So I think that's nice to be open about things that concern you. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Awesome, thank you.
And I would like to jump in just kind of from the ISSS perspective to touch base on some of what you were all saying about the sponsorship piece. Because if you are authorized through CPT or OPT or STEM OPT, you have work authorization already. You don't require sponsorship from the employer. CPT, like I said in the beginning, is approved in-house. ISSS approves it. It's more an internal, kind of easier work authorization. It's before you graduate. After you graduate, OPT and STEM OPT, is authorization to work, which is granted by USCIS. So you don't require sponsorship from an employer when you're on OPT or STEM OPT. You already have the ability to work. You just need an employer who's directly related to your degree. They're not trying to change your visa status at this point. I think what you all are thinking about more is the sponsorship in regards to H1b status. So to have an H1b visa, yes, you do need sponsorship from the employer, and that's a lot more investment from the employer's side. And so depending on your personal goals, maybe you do want H1b sponsorship eventually. And so that would kind of narrow down the amount of employers that you can work for, because maybe fewer employers are willing to go that extra step and sponsor somebody for H1b. But when you're on OPT and STEM OPT, you don't require sponsorship. So just to consider, what stage are you at? And maybe H1b could be a future goal, but immediately outside of graduation, immediately after graduation, when you're on OPT, your horizon of potential employers can be broader because you don't necessarily need that H1b sponsorship yet. You have OPT and possibly STEM OPT ahead of you. And as Dima was mentioning, OPT and STEM OPT and CPT are ways to develop relationships with employers. So maybe they don't think they want to sponsor somebody, but then they hire you and you work there for a year or year and a half, and they love you and they want to keep you. And then they might be more willing to consider H1b sponsorship. Or you use OPT and or STEM OPT to continue to develop your resume, obviously, and get more work experience. And then you become more appealing for H1b sponsorship. So I just wanted to clarify that, because H1b sponsorship can definitely limit the scope a bit, but that's not necessarily what everybody's looking for, especially immediately following graduation. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Very, very important for us all to know that. So thank you for the clarification. And just hearing all of our panelists speak about their individual traits and the personalities that they bring into their jobs, it's been so wonderful to hear all that. So as we continue to think about how we want to shape our companies and where we work, with what our best skill sets are, it's something to really keep in mind to really know ourselves and what we bring to the table and what we can offer. That's really going to sell yourself. So I wanted to be able to give Yang a little bit of time to talk about, from the career coach side, any more additional advice for our international students. And I feel like this past hour and a half just went by so quickly. We want to leave a little bit of time for you all to ask us any questions that you may have. And if we're not able to get to your questions right away, I'm sure our panelists would love to connect with you via email at a later time. So I'm pass it over to Yang.
Thank you. Yes, we definitely want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm just gonna share this with you all. From a strategic point of view, and as a career coach, I think the student alumni panelists touch a little bit on this too. You can start here, right? In terms of, as an international student, you want to look at who are the top companies that hire H1b visas, and then maybe copy and paste these companies onto a LinkedIn or alumni filter search and try to connect with UCSC alumni. Maybe they're working at these companies and then create networks like that, right? So that way you can get that insider knowledge, and eventually if you work for these companies, then the chance of obtaining H1b would be much easier. So just wanted to share that with you all. And let me see, anything else? And I think Linda has just a brief notes on these two questions. I'm just going to share her response to these two questions with us. And she said, regarding the first question, she said, job postings get a lot of applicants a day. To stand out, try to research on LinkedIn if you know anyone who works there, even a friend of a friend of a friend, to see if you can try to make a connection. If not, try to find people's profile on LinkedIn who worked at your desired companies. Look to see any commonalities in the background from people they hire, and so forth, and connect with them. And so regarding the visa-specific hiring tips, she mentioned this earlier, and she said that, she mentioned this earlier. I can find the notes. Okay, I can't find the notes now. Okay. Okay, I lost the notes there, but I know she mentioned something about that. So let me see if I can find it. Give me a minute or a second, yeah. Okay, here it is. So she said recruiter will often ask you if you have visa requirements. So be honest during your first conversations. Just be honest about if you're going to need require visas or not. Just be honest. So that's her take on that. And with that, Andy, I'm gonna turn it over back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Yang. All right, and let's get to maybe one or two questions that we can have today, and I'll pass it over to Vanessa to help us curate that.
Thank you. And anybody in the audience, please add your questions in. We'll go ahead and start with Sean's question. How can we be introduced to people and recruiters now that career fairs aren't happening in person at least? It seems hard to set yourself apart when the initial contact is just a cover letter and a resume. So how can you stand out, basically? What alternatives are there to career fairs if they're not happening in person?
Can I add?
Please, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. Career fairs are still happening virtually. We do have from the Career Center, we have virtual career fairs. And I think it's just a different structure. If you sign up nowadays with virtual career fairs, you actually get one-on-one time with the employer. So that can be of your, to your advantage, because then there's, nobody behind your back and pressuring you and telling you to hurry up, right? I'm next, kind of. So our virtual career fairs, if you happen to sign up, you actually have a dedicated 30 minutes per employer. So that's something to note.
Cool. And Yang, I'm looking at your website here. I'll add this into the chat about the career fairs. Do you all often, are your career fairs organized by theme, or sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, like by like computer engineering,
Yeah, we have a mix. So every quarter there's a mix. We do have there are the regular occurrence ones. In the fall, there would be the accounting firms, right? So they're in the fall. Graduate schools, they're in the fall. Our fall internship career fairs. And then we have in the winter we'll have specific, depending on the time of hiring, right? Companies are hiring, so we'll bring them on board. And for the spring, next quarter, we'll have our spring and career fair. So we do have, it's a mix, but then there are a couple of, depending on the time, right? When companies are hiring, industries are hiring, we do try to base on those industries timeline as well.
All right, thank you. Shalom has a question here, and really talking about salary negotiations. So if any of the panelists have any insights on that, would love to know the salary negotiation aspect when accepting your full-time job. Did you negotiate? If so, what's the situation and how did you do it? As an international student, I always feel lucky to get an offer and thus feel less encouraged to negotiate. So any insights on salaries or negotiations, talking about pay, which can be taboo, anything like that?
I can share my experience. I did, but it didn't change. Like the salary didn't change. And after I entered the company and then talking to a few coworkers and stuff, we found out that it's it's more on a, I guess, requirement kind of based. If you are an undergrad, like you have a range of salary. And if you are a master student, then your salary kind of everybody starting from the same. So it's because that I think because when you grad, we just didn't have much more to negotiate. And that's why they just set it at a similar or the same level. But I think if you have experience in like jobs and other working positions, then you can bring in that experience because I think it doesn't hurt to ask. It's not like if you ask, then they will be like, okay, it's a lot of trouble to deal with. I'm gonna revoke the offer. No, it's not like that. So I think if you feel like you would like the chance or the opportunity to negotiate, then you should just do it. But that's just my take.
Great, thank you. Cool. We'll take one. I don't know. We have one more question. And also Joyce is signing off, and Joyce put in her LinkedIn information. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking your time, and enjoy your next meeting. Have a good rest of the day, Joyce.
Thank you, Joy.
Sergey's question
I
here
think-
is just in regards to basically skills when it comes to all these different specific softwares that people need to know, different languages. What's the best way to find out which skills would be most useful in the jobs? I'll go ahead and answer that. I think that really kind of the job descriptions is a good way to kind of work backwards. So you can find the job postings or maybe look at a collection of postings and find the minimum qualifications and the desired qualifications that are in a particular job. And it should list a lot of those different things like particular softwares or like technological languages to be familiar with and things like that, and then kind of work backwards and see what skills you don't have and where those gaps might lead so that you can work on developing that information. And just in sake of time, I think we should probably close it up here. If anybody has lingering questions, please send them out to us. Yang, a closing note about our feedback survey?
Yeah, feedback survey. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please check your emails afterward for a brief 1-2 minute survey. It's just going to be a minute, pretty much. So, and here's our contact info for career success. You all could email cc_coach@ucsc.edu. Visit our websites. We have career coach virtual drop-in hours available. So stop by.
Yes, thank you, Yang. And then again, from us on the global engagement side, we're always open and ready to help serve you all. If you didn't already know, we are doing Zoom appointments online with an ISSS advisor and global programming and skills doing programs. We have a lot happening this week. So do check out our website, global.ucsc.edu, for a list of upcoming events. We're having 2 tax-related workshops coming up this week, actually. And so if you are employed right now and need to file some taxes for the first time or your second or third or fourth time, I know I don't even know how to do my taxes yet still. So definitely come check it out. But we again, thank you so much for your time. And thank you again to all of our amazing panelists. And thank you to Yang as well for really sharing your wisdom, your guidance to everybody in this space. We really, really appreciate it. And we look forward to our next program together. And with that said, thank you again so much. And we'll see you at the next one. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much. Thank you, panelists. Have a good day, everybody.
Me too.